balloon this morning. Hello there, Haunted Maple 112. Thank you for joining me by the fireside for my latest story, spooky story, The Sound. An unbearably muggy summer gave way to a barely breathable night. Windows stayed open in desperate hope of a cooling breeze, but none came. The old tomcat was calling to his ladies in the alley. In the distance, a neighbor's dog barked at a wandering raccoon in search of a meal. The familiar chirp of a chorus of crickets, all the sounds of another summer. It is mid-early hours of the morning. An exhausted neighborhood sound asleep, the rhythm of another day gearing up. The alarm clock on Harley's nightstand said 4:01. She wasn't due to get up till 7:30. Jed had fallen asleep in the living room in front of the fan watching a movie. It began in a low decibel, scarcely audible in her neighborhood. But the neighbor's dog heard it and began to whimper. He clawed at the screen door to be let in. With that failing, he crawled through an open basement window, forgotten earlier in the day. 5 minutes later, Harley's clock read 4:06. It was still too early to wake. The low frequency ceased, and the neighborhood's dogs began to howl as others in the neighborhood did. The crickets faded as one. The stillness, overwhelming, hung in the humid air. 4:30, and Harley still had 4 hours sleep ahead of her. The piercing screech burst into the neighborhood from the woodland. Harley bolted up in her bed. Lights came on in each bedroom on her block. The screeching continued intermittently. In those first moments, the ringing of her phone caused her to jump back. Answering her phone, Harley whispered for some reason, "Hello? Harley, are you hearing this?" Her friend Nash whispered back. It was like a stereo. She could hear this hysterical noise through her phone and the window. "Yes, Nash, what is it?" Harley inquired. "I have no idea. I've never heard anything like this. I wish it would stop." As Nash spoke, he was securing his open windows as briskly as possible. "I've never known you to be afraid." This caused Harley's anxiety to increase. "Harley, secure your windows, especially those towards the trees. I've done the same." Nash had also called his 3 dogs inside. He had barely opened the back door when they bounded past him, cowering under the kitchen table. An hour later, it stopped. 5:30, and the birds began to sing. "I have 3 hours of sleep left. We'll confer later today." "I'm going to try and sleep," Harley informed him. "All right, call me later." Nash ended the call. 3 hours later, Harley's alarm went off. Her eyes opened to overcast skies and a light rain. Relief may be on its way. She showered and dressed for another day. It was the start to a much-desired holiday. As promised, she contacted Nash later. The neighborhood is abuzz of confusion over the sound from last night. Some neighbors are believing it was teenagers with a speaker terrorizing them. Some instantly blame Sasquatch, yet others had their own theories. UFO, said one. Banshee, said another. An animal being killed, mentioned the corner store owner. Nash shot down each one without uttering a word. He was set to have dinner at Harley's that night. The 3 dogs accompanied him to her place, 3 doors down. The boys made themselves at home in her living room with Jed. I've been listening to the neighbors. They were all over the place with responsible reasons. Anywhere from UFOs to animals being killed. Harley placed his dinner plate in front of Nash before sitting herself down. Jed is enjoying your dog's company, she laughed. Can't believe my dog fell asleep to a movie last night. But she knew what he wanted to talk about. You don't believe any of it, she observed by his facial expression. No, I don't. I have never heard anything like that before. The dogs won't leave me. Harley peered over his shoulder. They were fast asleep. Thank goodness they weren't hurt. They knew enough to come home. They were all close to the house. He took a sip of his Pepsi. I'll be expecting this rain to keep up. I'll be expecting this rain to keep whatever it was away tonight. I've never had my house so tightly shut. I was terrified. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't spoken with you, she told him. I was grateful you answered. The sky grew laden with darker clouds. Nash took the cue to start home before the clouds opened up. I'm hopeful for a good night's sleep, Harley informed him. Call me once you're inside. Nash agreed without hesitation. Harley was sure to check her doors and windows before turning in. It was 10 o'clock when she turned off the lights. Sleep didn't come nearly as swift. The anticipation was eventually overtaken. Her posture relaxed. Please, no screeching tonight. The rain had done its job. The air was cooler. Harley had searched out a light blanket for the night before bed. The night was thankfully uneventful. The consecutive evenings followed suit. The neighborhood returned to its typical self. Harley and Nash went about life as they always did. A month out since the horrendous screeching, there was a consensus that whatever had produced the sound had moved on. Nerves had abated. Children were encouraged to play outside, but be ever vigilant. The halfway point of the summer had come and gone. Diamonds fell from above as fireworks exploded in the midnight sky. Saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal plunged to earth in an assortment of waning color. It was Canada Day celebrations on the block. Harley's alarm showed 2 a.m. Once again, the sound began low. Within moments, it crescendoed to a high decibel. Sitting straight up in her bed, Harley's heart pounded in her chest. Panic set in. She ran to assure herself windows and doors were locked. Her phone rang. Harley, you hearing this? It almost sounds like a laugh. I'm terrified. Her hands violently shook. Where are the dogs? Inside. They won't leave me. Nash smoothed his dogs' heads. Stay on the phone, please. Harley's tears were barely held back. Once again, lights flickered on in the bedrooms through her block and the next. The laugh in the stillness turned to more of a cackle. What was stalking this unsuspecting neighborhood? Was it maniacal in nature? Harley was beyond distraught. Alone in the dark home, with no outside lighting. How close was it? The sickening sound reverberated through the air for an hour. Then it ceased. The hush that descended was eerier than the cackle itself. She wished she hadn't sent her dog to her sister's. The early morning hours appeared darker and prolonged. Not one cricket continued to chirp. No owl or whippoorwill made a sound. In the morning, the neighbors gathered. "That sounded like a witch last night," one said. "I think it was a hyena," another said. "We don't have hyenas here. They're in Africa," someone informed. "Nash, what are your thoughts?" an older lady living across the street inquired. "To be truthful, I'm at a loss," he replied. "You, the cryptid specialist, at a loss? My goodness, what is the world coming to?" a non-believer teased. Harley stepped in. "Just because you don't believe doesn't give you the right to subject us to your ignorance." And she stepped back. A young girl about 14 spoke up. "Process of elimination. It can't be a creature like Igopogo. We have no lake near us. Can't be a Mothman. I don't believe he's ever been vocal. I've never heard of a chupacabra living here. This isn't New Jersey, so it's not their devil." Conspicuously, she had neglected one extremely widespread Sasquatch. "Personally, I have never heard mention of one cackling." Nash appeared to read their minds. "But wouldn't the other sounds possibly lean in that direction?" Harley joined in. "We can't make any assumptions. There are too many other traits we haven't experienced." "Do you wait for it to kill us?" an overwrought woman exclaimed, forcefully pushing herself from the back of the crowd. "I think you are over-exaggerating," Harley lashed out. A hush transpired over the gathering. "Do you hear that?" the overwrought woman shouted. A guttural growl emerged from the woods. The imagined size of the beast left the group petrified. Each head turned to the growl. They braced themselves for a rush towards them. None came. They continued to wait in the silence as mid-afternoon storm clouds converged on their area, hues of gray with a dusting of white. The sun disappeared behind the billowing puffs of water drops above. "The sky is going to open up any minute," the corner shop owner remarked. "We still have time," Harley noted. "We have to stay vigilant. We can't allow our guard to go down," the neighbors agreed. The first distinct precipitation cascaded from the darkened clouds. The crowd dispersed to their homes. Nash and his 3 dogs followed Harley. "Do you feel safe alone?" A simple question. "Not really, but I need to be," she replied. Soon after, Nash and his dogs left for home. It was a short walk in pouring rain. He was soaked when he stood on the veranda, staring out to the woodland. He was optimistic the weather would decrease the reoccurring sound for at least the evening. Harley dozed off, sitting in her sofa watching TV. In truth, she was afraid to go to bed. She had woken enough times to the appalling sound. Her bed was no longer a sanctuary. Harley awoke to a knock on her door. It was Nash and his dogs. "Did you manage to sleep well?" "Scarcely." She invited him into the living room. I felt too uneasy to sleep in bed. I camped out here on the sofa. I did the same. The dog stayed close. At 7 a.m., a moist morning, it returned. The piercing echo from the woodland. When will it stop? Harley cried out. She had arrived at her breaking point. I'm yearning for it to end, Nash answered. The entire neighborhood aspired the same conclusion. Day or night made no contrast to whatever was generating the shrieking. The month of menacing sound felt like a year. On a sunny autumn morning, trees alive in bright fashion, they heard it no more. A rustic orange, yellow, and red descended to the cement and asphalt. It stopped. Harley and Nash have never set foot inside the woodland. There was no need to. Whatever it was that fed fuel to the fire had moved on, they guessed. There are some things we will never have an answer for, and this is one of them. I hope you enjoyed the first story, and I hope you'll come back for more. I have some of my older ones that I will be reading. Also, I do still have quite a few haunted locations to tell you about for here in Ottawa and around Canada. So thank you for joining me on this evening. If you're new to the channel, just checking it out, please do check out a few other videos that I have here right now. If you do like them, please give it a thumbs up, drop me a comment, and share them out. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, consider subscribing while you're here. And remember to click the notification bell so that you'll know the next time that I upload. And until then, sleep tight.